Welcome back to the channel. We are back on the road to 600 with the OG crew cab. If you're new to the channel, I've teamed up with the Hungry Diesel to try and get my VE pump 12 valve Cummins up to 600 horsepower, which is quite a feat, but I think we can do it. Today we're going to install a bunch of stuff, so let's get to installing some parts. If you've been following along with the series, you know this has been kind of a roller coaster. The highest horsepower we've hit so far is 362 horsepower, but we've also hit 900 and some odd foot-pounds of torque, which is really cool. Now here's a quick rundown of what we've done to the truck so far to hit that 362 horsepower. We replaced our stock turbo and exhaust manifold. We upgraded our stock injectors. We also swapped out our stock head bolts and stock valve springs. And to get the power to the ground, we installed a 6-speed manual transmission. We also have done a bunch of other upgrades, but you're gonna have to go check out the previous videos in this series to see what those were. In this video, we're going to upgrade our stock push rods and our stock tappets. We're also going to change out our stock cam to a Hamilton high performance cam. And we're going to pull out our stock injection pump and install a new one, which is from the Hungry Diesel, and it's their competition injection pump. The first thing we need to do is we have to tear a bunch of stuff out. So let's start tearing stuff apart. So we've got a bunch of this stuff torn down. I'm down to the AC condenser, which was mounted right here. Got it unbolted. I have a fully charged R12 AC system that works great, so I can't undo the condenser. Luckily, it's got a little wiggle room, so we're gonna try and just kind of wiggle it out of the way, do something to hold it here. But we got to get the intercooler out, because in order to do the cam, we're going to have to come in right through here. So we're going to have this out of the way as much as we can to be able to get that cam in and not lose all of our R12 refrigerant. Draining the coolant on these trucks is pretty straightforward. There's a pepcock down on this driver's side in the lower corner of it. Here's a pro tip that I saw someone use at one point, and I've been using it ever since. Get a water bottle, cut part of the back off, and so you can set that right under where the pepcock is, and then all the coolant will come right out here. So I've got a lot of stuff disassembled, got the front cover off. This is the cam and the cam gear right here. So you can see it here now. On a first gen, here's the issue. I've been told that you can't pull the cam out with the gear on it with this right here. So I'm gonna see, it looks like it might clear, but if not, I've got an idea to actually make this piece removable, keep this factory piece, but make it removable. So I'm gonna get that taken care of, and then I'll show you what I come up with. All right, we got the rocker assemblies off. Yours may be different because I've got head studs in here. So yours are just gonna be bolts that come out. But once that's off, all we have to do now is pull the stock push rods out. Now we need to get to the fun part, which is pulling the cam, switching out the tappets, switching out the push rods. Now, if you haven't followed along with this disassembly, you're a little confused about the process, I have a whole video where I show how to get to this point where I replace the valve springs and the head studs. I'll link that video in the description below for you. All right, now that we have all the rockers removed, I actually removed the cam gear retainer as well. But before we pull the cam, we're gonna pull our injection pump gear off, pull our injection pump, and pull our tappet cover. So let's get there, and then we'll be able to access the tappets a lot better through there. Now, unlike the P-pump, this gear is keyed, and we don't want the key to fall down. Most of the time it's pretty difficult to get out, but if you've removed it before, it might come out pretty easily. But there you can see how it's keyed, which is really nice. All right, so I got the pump nuts off. There's 3 13mm nuts, and then there's a bolt that goes through this bracket to here. It's loose, but in order to get the pump out, we've got to loosen this bracket. There's 3 10mm bolts that hold it to the block. So I took the top one out and the bottom one out, and now it should kind of swivel. Yeah. We also have to take our return line off real quick. There we go, 17mm bolt on the banjo bolt. And careful, because there's the O-ring on the other side of it. Don't want to lose that. There we go. Now, there we go. For the process of changing out the tappets, it's quite a tedious process. I'm following the video that Horsepower Tube put out on YouTube. It seems to be very well done. If there's anything different that I do, I'll let you know, but for the most part, I'm gonna follow his step-by-step tutorial on how he did this. So for the dowels to put inside the tappets, I got a big long piece of 1/2-inch dowel, cut it into 24 1-inch pieces, and cut this crosshatch pattern right in the tip of it. That's so that can collapse inside the tappet. Now we're gonna shove those in the tappets. I also drilled a little hole in the top and put an eyelet in there as well, and I'll show you what that's for. So I found this keychain at my local Ace Hardware. Has all these little tiny carabiners on there, and the reason I got it is because I can hook my string to this, hook that onto my dowel, and then fish the tappet in and out that way, and then just disconnect this very easily. So that way I don't have to keep untying and tying the string. Now some of you are probably wondering, what is the benefit of installing these new push rods and these new tappets? These two products fall under the category of what I consider supporting modifications. They're able to help withstand a lot of the power we're trying to achieve, but they don't necessarily increase the performance at all. The tappets are necessary because the cam we're putting in has slightly wider lobes on it, and we need slightly wider tappets to match those lobes. And the push rods just tolerate that higher and faster frequency movement from the higher RPMs and the more power that we're putting out. So you saw I did both the zip ties and the clamps on the tappet. I want to do everything I can to make sure those don't fall, so I've got that double safety measure in place. So let's pull the cam. As soon as we pull the cam, I've got this 1.5-inch PVC pipe that I cut directly in half, and this is going to go in where the cam was and rest so we can drop the tappet right onto it. So let's do that and start pulling and switching out some of the tappets for the new ones. Make sure before you pull the cam, if you got a mechanical lift pump, pull that as well, or else you won't be able to pull the cam out. There we go. All right, guys, we did it. All the tappets are replaced. I don't know what to say about that. It wasn't hard. It was very tedious. I ended up dropping 2 into the oil pan. Luckily, they were still attached to the string, but that didn't make it any easier to get them out. Had to fish them out. Literally, I have my tackle box open and I used some type of hook with 3 hooks on it. So I literally fished them out. So we got those all changed. Now we just need to throw the new cam in. I went this morning on the way to work and got the cam gear pressed off the old cam and pressed onto the new cam, so it's good to go. So let's slide it in and then the tappets are done. Make sure you put copious amounts of assembly lube onto the camshaft. So before we throw the cam all the way in, let me show you guys something. Right here, this is the KDP, so that's a bolt that holds the timing case to the block. So I did this KDP fix 6 years ago, and it's held up just fine. That's just a piece of hanger that I bent around, made a loop, and Loctited that in there. So it's been fine for 6 years. So you need to do that. The other thing you need to do is take all 3 of these case bolts out and Loctite them in. They are also known to fall out, actually probably more commonly than the KDP is. So I'm going to pull those all real quick and Loctite them, and then we'll push the cam all the way in. I should also clarify, I pulled the cam just a little bit out to get to these bolts, but you don't have to do that. If your cam is still in, you can just bar the engine over until these holes here line up with where each of the bolts is. So that's not a big deal. So before we do the tappet cover and seal all that up, I'm going to put all the push rods in and put the rockers on so that I know the push rods are seated well into the tappets and we don't bend a push rod. These are Hamilton Extreme Duty push rods. All right, we got our tappet cover in. This is a tappet cover I got from Bradley over at Savage Fab. It's pretty sweet. It's hard to see down in there just because there's not a lot of light, but we got it installed. I'll try and get my camera down there and show you the vent system that I'm running, and then we also got our mechanical lift pump put back in. So where we're at now, the injection pump won't be here till tomorrow, and the event is the next day. So we're gonna do everything we can and just leave the injection pump for the last thing. So we gotta get the injectors swapped out to our 6x16s. Then we can put all of our fuel return lines on, and then all we'll have left to do is put the injection pump in, the injector lines, and set the valve lash, and we'll be good to go. All right guys, we got our competition injection pump in, finally. The event is tomorrow, so let's get this thing installed, get all the other stuff buttoned back up, and head to the event. Installing these injection pumps is fairly straightforward. Unlike the P pump, the VE pump is keyed. So there's a keyway in the pump gear and there's a key on the shaft of the pump. You really can't mess it up. So let's get it installed, get all the mounting nuts tightened down, put all the bolts back holding the pump in place, and that way we'll have the pump ready to go and we can install all our fuel lines, return lines, wiring, get this thing buttoned up. So if you remember, we cut this support out. So here's my fix for it. I put 2 riv nuts up here, 2 riv nuts right here, and I made a new support. Boom, solid. All right guys, a little bit of an update. You can see I've pretty much got everything put back together. I started it up, I adjusted the idle, it runs really good, got the grill pretty much on, but when it was running, I noticed the tappet cover is leaking bad. So I don't know if the cork gasket slid when I installed it or what the issue is. So I was thinking of just calling it a night. It's 11 p.m. The event's tomorrow. You have to leave at like 5:30 a.m. But I called my buddy Cade Whipple and he told me I can't call it quits. So I've got a factory tappet cover. I've got a brand new factory tappet cover gasket. And I think I'm gonna do this. Well guys, I got this tappet cover pulled out and kind of like I suspected, the cork gasket slid, and this is the bottom side of the tappet cover. So the bottom part of the gasket slid up, so it was leaking on this complete bottom part of the tappet cover. So I got this pulled out. It took me a little bit less than an hour. So I'm gonna put the original tappet cover back in. Luckily I have an OEM gasket sitting here. I'll get this cleaned up later, throw it on a different engine. It's not the product's fault at all. It's just that when I was installing it, I even thought to myself not to let that gasket slide, and I thought I did an okay job, but apparently not. So we'll save this for another build. I'll get the OEM one put back in. Hopefully it doesn't take too long, but I will see you guys at the dyno event. All right guys, we are here, finally made it. That was a long night, but I did get the tappet cover changed out and the truck is running awesome. This pump and the injectors and the cam, I don't know what it is, but it runs awesome. It runs super clean, which I'm very surprised about with the injectors. But I'm number 15, which is coming right up. But we got a nice spot here. Calvin came with me today. So they have the Northwest dyno, which is the super flow, and then they've got this other smaller one, and I think they're doing like the compounds and the nitrous trucks on the big one, and then this one for the small singles. And so I'll be on that one, I'm pretty sure. Buddy? Yes. That's it right there. Right there? Yeah. Over. That's it right there. Ready? Yep. No more. Okay. Is that cool?
Yes.
So we have 442 with the KSB on and 417 with it off. So it did make a huge difference. Well guys, that was a ton of work to do in a week before the event, but we made it to the event and we put down some really good numbers. I hope you weren't expecting me to hit 600 horsepower yet with this setup. I knew that wouldn't be the case. Eric at the Hungry Diesel was thinking around 500 horsepower. I was a little more conservative and thinking around 450 horsepower, which is what we did. We have a few more things to do to try and get it up to that 600 horsepower mark, but first we need to do some tweaking with the current setup because we should be able to pass that 500 horsepower mark. After talking with Eric after the dyno event, we have two main things we need to do to get the most out of this setup. The first thing, we need to upgrade our fuel lines from the stock fuel lines up to 1/2-inch fuel lines to make sure our fuel pressure stays high enough for us to be able to use as much fuel as we can. The other thing we need to do is play with the timing. That's one thing with having worked so late on the truck, I didn't have any time to tune the timing. But because one of our runs was 417 horsepower without the KSB on, and the next run was 442 with the KSB on, that shows us that we need more timing. So we're gonna play with advancing the timing, try and get that dialed in, and we should be able to hit 500 horsepower with this current setup. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. That was a blast at that event. I've got 2 more events in the next 2 months lined up. I hope to meet you guys at some of these events. Let me know if you want to come see the truck. Hope you enjoyed this video. We'll see you guys in the next one.